Welcome to Quality Policing Extra. I'm Nick Selby. Somewhere between a fifth and a half of U.S. police are wearing body cameras. It's hard to tell the exact number, but we know the number's rising. Body-worn cameras clipped to the uniform or the headgear of an officer, and they're intended to capture the officer's eye view of incidents. Body cams have been held to be the most important solution to police transparency in America. Here's South Carolina's Republican U.S. Senator Tim Scott speaking in 2015.
Today, I think I have found a solution that will help law enforcement officers and our citizens go home safe. That solution, Mr. President, are body-worn cameras to be worn by our law enforcement officers throughout this country.
And the videos from these cameras, now being captured at a rate of hundreds of thousands of hours a day, have been important. Last year, in the American jurisdictions that have body cameras, video was used by nearly every prosecutor, nearly 93% of them, in cases against civilian suspects. Know the percentage of those same prosecutors who used body camera video to prosecute cops? 8. Almost all prosecutors are using the video to prosecute civilians. Almost none of them are using them for what we thought body cameras were there for. If you think that means body cameras aren't working, well, you're wrong. The truth is, body cameras are working just fine. They're just working differently from the way people expected they would. That's a really important disconnect, because if you're concerned about how you're policed, and who isn't, you really got to know this stuff. But a lot of our national expectations on these things were formed listening to politicians who were looking to be seen as doing something. Senator Scott is a Republican, but this is a bipartisan issue. Here's Secretary Clinton last year.
We should make sure every police department in the country has body cameras to record interactions between officers on patrol and suspects. That will improve transparency and accountability. It will help protect good people on both sides of the lens.
And the media ate it up.
Many departments are trying to figure out ways to increase transparency. One popular solution, body-mounted cameras.
Body cameras billed as the ultimate transparency and protection against police encounters that go bad.
What's ironic is that Senator Scott, Secretary Clinton, and a host of other officials and the press were scaling Mount Hype much more aggressively than even the companies that sell the cameras, which found themselves in the strange position of having to temper wildly enthusiastic expectations. So for the next few minutes, we're going to ask you to put aside everything you think you know about body cameras, and we'll unpack this together. Let's start in the summer of 2014.
Don't shoot!
In the summer of Michael Brown, of Eric Garner, of Black Lives Matter, the more we learned about police use of force, the more we, the nation, the national media, realized how little we knew about it.
I think it's embarrassing for those of us in government who care deeply about these issues, especially the use of force by law enforcement. And I cannot tell you how many people were shot by police in the United States last year or anything about the demographics, and that's a very bad place to be.
We started asking ourselves, with story after story after story in the news about cops shooting black men, how we could believe cops. In 2015, Walter Katz, the Citizen Oversight Commissioner in San Jose, California, noticed that there were no cases brought against officers in incidents where there was no video, no matter how controversial the case was. And in 2014, there were a lot of controversial cases.
Akai Gurley,
James Boyd,
Romaine Brisbane,
Tamir Rice,
Dylan Taylor,
Samantha Ramsey,
Harminder Singh Shergill,
Joseph Jennings,
David Hooks,
Christopher Roop,
Jack Hawkes, John Crawford III,
Eric Garner.
No testing! No peace!
Protesters of different ages and races demanding answers in the shooting death of 18-year-old Michael Brown at the hands of a policeman.
To many, body cameras meant that now we could see what the cop saw, we could see the scene, and when the cop lied, the video would show it. Attorney General Eric Holder and President Obama moved swiftly to get cameras on as many officers as possible.
I'm going to be proposing some new community policing initiatives that will significantly expand funding and training for local law enforcement, including up to 50,000 additional body-worn cameras for law enforcement agencies.
And then, no reduction in officer-involved shootings, no reduction in controversial incidents. See, the main expectation was that when officers had these cameras on their chests, people would be more courteous and less likely to fight, and officers would be more courteous and less likely to behave badly. That's not what happened. Even worse, there was never any evidence that it actually would happen. People just hoped that it would. Over the next couple of podcasts, we'll look at the data behind the cameras, what they can help with and what they can't, what we don't know and what we do. One thing is very clear. Body cameras are good for policing. I personally support them. I bought my first body camera with my own money in 2010. Body cameras provide lots of evidence that we've never had before about how cops and citizens behave during interactions. There's a lot of promise. And body cameras do provide transparency. What is transparent, though, is the question. Sure, we absolutely get to see more of when cops do bad things.
For the second time in less than a month, video shows Baltimore police officers allegedly planting evidence. Newly released body camera footage apparently shows officers placing drugs in a car. The alleged incident.
But most of the time, the transparency body cameras bring is evidence of civilians committing crimes. Secretary Clinton was right. Cameras do protect good people on both sides of the lens. People simply presumed that it was the cops who weren't good, but the video is showing that, in fact, transparency cuts both ways. Almost all prosecutors are using body-worn video to prosecute civilians, and almost none of them are using them for what we thought body cameras were there for. If you think that that means body cameras aren't working, well, you're wrong. The truth is, body cameras are working just fine. They're just working differently from the way people expected that they would. That's a really important disconnect, because if you're concerned about how you're policed, and who isn't, you really got to know this stuff. Transparency cuts both ways, and the transparent fact body cameras have shown is that people, civilians, act like asses in front of them and while confronting cops, and the video catches a lot of it. Cops are not keeping this a secret. Here's Commander Eric Lowe of the Lexington, Kentucky Police Department in 2016.
The biggest thing we think we're going to get out of body cameras is establishing transparency with the community to show them that we have confidence that our officers are doing the right thing every day.
If you're a defense attorney, you get this. You're probably more worried about how and when videos are made.
The big problem, of course, is that the police control the button.
That's an important point from Stephen Wasserman. If anyone other than cops gets to see this from the front row, it would be legal aid.
I'm Stephen Wasserman. I'm with the criminal practice at the Legal Aid Society and in the Special Litigation Unit.
From the defense table, it's less about whether cameras are being used to go after misbehaving cops. Prosecutors who are using body-worn camera video use it to decide whether to prosecute and in preparing the charges that they'll bring. If you're imagining a courtroom with a jury watching, that's not it. What the prosecutors mainly use the video for is to get a plea deal faster. There's evidence that video reduces time from arrest to plea. But to Wasserman, this is nothing new.
We've lived with video for many years. I mean, there's many video cameras that capture incidents and crimes, and it certainly has helped in many instances to resolve matters that otherwise would have been very uncertain and would have had to be litigated.
So, how do body cameras shake out for the defense?
It is a sort of a net liability to the defense, but the importance is to make sure that the recording is done in a way that approximates some kind of even-handedness and objectivity.
Okay, so nothing new about video, and defense attorneys are very interested in how the cops record their clients. But to really begin our descent from the summit of Mount Hype, let's consider that the most common use of body-worn camera video is nothing.
The single biggest block of videos that I'm aware of right now at most agencies for most officers is just sitting.
Because arrests are a small part of what police do, and most of the time no evidence is needed in traffic cases. That's Seth Stoughton.
I'm a law professor at the University of South Carolina School of Law, where I specialize in the regulation of policing.
So, how often do videos just sit there? Consider this.
For more than 8 months, police body cams at a Northwest Suburban department mistakenly recorded all the time, even as officers were taking bathroom breaks, involved in other non-essential police work.
It took these cops almost 9 months to realize that the cameras were always on. That doesn't happen if you're accessing the system all the time, to check on stuff. This is the kind of thing that Wasserman was concerned about. But even that's too technical to keep the attention of most people who just want a simple answer. When is my police department going to get these cameras? Instead, the question citizens and even police agencies should ask is, what do we want these cameras to do? And they haven't been asking it. How do I know? When most cops get cameras, they hate them. A year later, they love them. When civilians hear the cops have cameras, they love it. A year later, they hate it. That says that neither cops nor civilians understand what they're getting into. And when they realize it, they change their minds.
Everyone is coming to the body camera question with a totally different take on what these tools are going to be used for. The community thinks, hey, you got this for officer accountability reasons, but all you're using it for is to prosecute people. I think that has the potential to be taken as a failure, a betrayal.
So if that's a failure, how do you even measure success? In 2016, Rachel Levinson-Waldman of the Brennan Center and I wrote a USA Today article in which we warned that if agencies didn't declare what they wanted cameras to do, there was no way to know whether they were doing it. Civil rights groups want to make sure there are hard and fast rules around when cameras roll and for how long. They're also pretty intensely interested in how those videos influence reports. Civil liberties groups believe that police have the advantage when it comes to body-worn cameras, not just because officers control the record button, but the playback button as well. Regardless of whether there's video of an incident, as we all know from cop shows, officers have to write reports about everything they do. These reports contain lots of tick box items and, often most important, a narrative. Perhaps the biggest policy-related controversy around body cameras is over something that sounds simple. Should officers be able to view the body camera video of the event they're writing about before they write their report? Or should they be required to write their report, then be allowed to watch the video, then be permitted to write a supplement in case they see something in the video that contradicted something that they wrote about the incident? Proponents of this latter option, which is often called write, watch, supplement, say that it provides the most fair option for everyone. They fear that cops who watch a video and then write reports can unintentionally or intentionally modify what they write to match the video, as opposed to memorializing their own recollection of the incident. Cops think this is just a game of gotcha and point out that neither the video nor the officer's memories are perfect recollection tools. Few people have looked at these issues as closely as Harlan Yu at Upturn.
Upturn is a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C., and we study technology's impact on civil rights and social justice issues.
Yu believes that poor policies governing the use of body cameras in the video they produce, from access by the public to use by officers and prosecutors, strongly favor the police and the state. In The Illusion of Accuracy, a November 2017 report, Upturn argues that the lack of policy requiring write-watch supplement is maybe the single biggest barrier to justice with body cameras.
If body-worn cameras have any chance of holding police accountable for misconduct, having officers be able to watch footage before writing the reports just makes it much easier for them if they were to try to push a false frame or a false narrative to act for the camera and to do so.
Yu also points out that the police select and buy the cameras, thus giving police the advantage.
Body-worn cameras are purchased by police departments. The money comes from the police, and officers operate the cameras. If you just think about the incentives that departments and officers have, it's no surprise how camera footage is being used.
But there are a couple of real problems with these viewpoints. Most obviously, cops didn't wake up one morning and say, golly, I've got no money in my budget, so I think I'm going to go out and buy some body cameras. We need to remember why these agencies were buying up body cameras like Beanie Babies. They were pressured intensely by politicians and by civil liberties groups to get the cameras.
We should make sure every police department in the country has body cameras to record interactions between officers on patrol and suspects.
Even Secretary Clinton's comment there reveals fundamental misunderstanding of what cameras are for. By singling out officers on patrol and suspects, it's clear she's both monumentally underestimating the population affected by cameras, which also includes passers-by, crime victims, 911 callers, informants, and other completely unrelated people, and loudly demanding that every officer has a camera. This was prototypical politician, a clearly stated demand for a muddy and amorphous solution. I won't group all civil liberties groups together. Some, like Upturn, never advocated for cameras. But to cops, it sounds as if now civil libertarians are saying that cameras are problematic because the police bought them, when, as a group, the police manifestly didn't want to buy them in the first place. That's not his point. Harlan's point, which Stephen Wasserman made separately, is no matter how we got here, here we are. Police control the record and play buttons, and since they are the government, we can't just, hope that they control them fairly. Like everything with body cameras, this is nuanced and unexpected. Second, with write-watch supplement versus watch-write, I've personally come to believe that write-watch supplement is ultimately better for cops. There are some really complicated but good reasons that come down to Graham versus Connor issues and proof of officer integrity and credibility in the face of protest. But I don't believe that watch-write is inherently dishonest. It's worth noting that there's not been a single case of cops getting caught engaging in this kind of skullduggery. And also, that a recent study compared officer narratives to what was seen on body video, and they found that cops' descriptions of what happened most of the time are pretty darned accurate. That study was funded by a camera maker, and 3 of the 5 scientists involved in the study declared financial interests in that firm. But they declared their conflicts properly, and the methodology looks sound. There's another study being worked on right now that isn't conflicted. It'll be released soon, and it has generally confirmed the earlier findings and expanded on them. Harlan Yu and I both do believe that policies about access should be fairer, to level the playing field. For example, if I complain about a cop, I should be able to get access to the video of the incident. Policy is very important, and it requires conversation and compromise. But I don't believe that policy will fix the inherent fact that the transparency brought by body camera video in fact shows us much more terrible behavior by civilians than cops, because that's actually the transparent truth. You know who agrees